time in the cherry blossom?
My time in the cherry blossom was 106.15. It wasn't my best, but it was decent for what it was. All right, ready to go.
My daughter's running she's running 2 events in the U.S. Masters Championship because she just turned 40. She's going to run the 5K and the steeplechase.
Oh, wow, good for her. Yeah, I'm sure her 5K time is a lot better than mine. Mine's 19 flat, but well, I'm better than average.
No, I can tell.
By far.
I can tell by looking at you you're better than average.
Okay, well, so let's begin.
Okay.
All right, I said that I'm going to have a very interesting guest on the MoCo Millennial, and maybe Mercury is in retrograde or something because I'm here with Robin Ficker, the notorious Robin Ficker, who is running for county executive. Now, full disclosure, I endorsed, so to speak, my candidate for county executive, but I want, as I said, opposing views. I think I'll go with the sangria.
Okay, white sangria or red?
Red is fine.
Okay, red sangria.
I should get something.
Yeah.
And for you?
I'm going to have, I think I'll have the salad bar.
Just a garden bar? Okay.
Yeah, I like salad.
Okay, and then let me see right, really fast,
Sure.
please.
You remind me a little bit of a vegetable.
Why?
Because you've got a little spring onion step.
Yeah.
You said red sangria, right?
Yes, I did.
Red vine.
Okay. Anyway, so I have here a Republican candidate for county executive, and I said I want a Republican on my show, right? And well, I found one. I also recently found a Republican in Takoma Park. That doesn't happen too much, but as I said, I like opposing views. I like to talk about things with people that I might disagree with, and but I also want to see where we might agree. In our second segment, we certainly will agree on some things.
We probably agree on almost everything.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But I'm for free speech. I'm for open dialogue, and I don't need a safe space. I'm not easily triggered like some other people I know. Okay, so
keep in mind that I ran for county executive in 2006. I'm the only one who's run for this office before, and I ran as an independent.
All right.
In 2006, and I got about 28,000 votes, which is about as many votes as Doug Duncan got in the 2014 primary for county executive. More votes than any independent has ever gotten countywide in Montgomery County.
Okay. Yeah, and that's interesting because of the so far 6-way Democratic race. I mean, it will be a very small margin. Whoever wins. Well, that's what we assume. We don't know.
I'll be surprised if the winner of that primary gets more than 28,000 votes, which is the number of votes I got in 2006. And the reason I say that is that in 2014 there were 3 Democrats in the primary. Ike Leggett, who was a 2-term incumbent, Doug Duncan, and Phil Andrews. Ike won with 40,000 votes. Doug Duncan got 28,000. Phil Andrews about 19,000. Now, in 2018, we have 6 candidates, no incumbent. So I'll be surprised if the winner gets more than 28,000 votes.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how that turns out. I mean, some analysts say that it's wide open, and some internal polls tend to suggest otherwise. Everyone kind of favors their own candidate, willing to keep things optimistic. But so you have experience.
You say it's wide open, but whoever wins it isn't going to have a mandate because they'll have only 28,000 votes, or say 30,000 votes. And guess how many votes term limits got? Term limits got 300,000 votes. That was a mandate for change.
Sure, we'll get to term limits, but first I want to ask, you've run for office since way before I was born. You've been running for various offices.
You're not that old. You're not that young either.
Well, thank you. Or what? So you know how old I am?
I would say you're probably around 29.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, you're on the right side of 30 still.
It's better than being 92.
Yeah, I'm not ready for that yet. I'll probably still owe student loans when I'm 92. And thank you. Oh, I need this. Okay, so you've been running for offices from the 70s. How has that worked out for you?
Well, keep in mind, I've also been putting questions on the ballot.
That we know.
Since 1974 was my first one, which required a county vote on all capital improvement projects issued by the county. That didn't pass. And then the next year, in 76, I had 3 questions on the ballot, including allowing recall of elected officials, including requiring a county vote on any capital improvement projects to be issued by the county for projects costing more than $1 million, and also requiring approval of increases in the property tax rate. They didn't pass, but in 1978, I had a question that passed. The county Democrats wanted to put the garbage dump for the county where Avenel Golf Course is today. That's how forward-looking they were. And I collected the signatures to say they couldn't put a garbage dump in a residential zone, and it passed with 75% of the vote. And they decided not to put the garbage dump in Avenel. And then the next election in 1982, the Democrats had a practice of trenching sewage sludge in residential zones near many of the homes here in Germantown. And kids and dogs and pets were coming into their mom's house with all kinds of stuff on their feet. Very likely sewage sludge. That didn't go over very well, so I put a question on the ballot to forbid the trenching of sewage sludge in residential zones, and that passed with about 80% of the vote.
Wow, that's an interesting
So it goes
initiative.
back a ways.
Yeah, and that seems to be an effective strategy, target local issues that affect people day to day, because when we
politics
canvass,
is local.
Yeah, when we canvass, though, for Montgomery County Central Committee, which I don't do anymore, but I did once this summer, it was kind of frustrating how people weren't focused on the local issues. Everyone just says, oh, we want to recall Trump. Just get Trump out of office. And I'm saying, what can we do at Montgomery County level?
Right.
So it seems more effective to focus on these local issues.
Well, the Democrats tried to associate Trump with term limits. And they put out literature with his picture on it saying people should vote against term limits. Didn't work very well because term limits got 70% of the vote. It won in 253 of 257 precincts. It lost, I think, in 3 precincts in Takoma Park and 1 in downtown Silver Spring, which are kind of out of step with the rest of the county. And it passed overwhelmingly despite the opposition of every elected county official. And as a matter of fact, the Democrats on the county council were rather sneaky because they filed a frivolous lawsuit to keep the voters from even voting on term limits, and now they're saying those voters should vote for them. Those voters should give them a promotion. They thought the voters were too dumb to vote on term limits. They tried to keep that question from the voters. So they were way out of step. I was more in step with the voters than they were.
Okay, I've read quotes from current council members questioning the knowledge base of the voters who did support term limits. Now, at the time, I was neutral. I didn't vote either way on that ballot issue.
You didn't cast your vote?
Not on the term limits question.
You couldn't make up your mind?
I was neutral. And I saw the arguments both ways. And I know some very progressive people in Silver Spring that voted for it, but not for the reasons that you and some Republicans and some fiscal conservatives claim that
What
voters
reasons
passed
did
it.
they have?
These people, a lot of them just wanted change. They were not happy with constituent services of certain council members, and they also thought that the incumbency advantage, the name recognition, the financing that people get. I mean, I don't want to talk down about people running for council at large right now, but for example, Hans Riemer has this financial advantage as an incumbent. He's not term limited, and I haven't really seen him out campaigning as much as some of the other at-large candidates, but he's still far ahead, or at least among the pack leaders in financing because he has the incumbency.
You know why? Well, first of all, let me say that in 2014, before term limits, we had only 6 candidates in the Democratic primary for 4 at-large seats, 3 of them from Takoma Park. Okay, and of course, they won. Now, after term limits, we have about 30 plus candidates running for these 4 at-large seats. So it's been quite a difference. But you see, under this public finance system, which Reimer's using, and 3 of the council members are using, the incumbent council members do have a big advantage because they have the ability to sell access to the council in return for contributions for county executive. But I don't think people voted for term limits because they wanted to give the council members a promotion. I don't think that's why they do. I think they voted for term limits because they didn't want the council members anymore.
It's a fair point that I've heard a lot. However, if they didn't want these specific council members to be reelected, they wouldn't reelect them. And you would think that if it was certainly we wanted to get rid of certain people, then those certain people wouldn't be getting the votes or the small donor contributions that they have been. However, so now if someone were to ask me if I would have voted for term limits now, I would not. And I have more faith in the public financing system. However, I do think we need some kind of ranked choice voting. And I understand how that might affect the candidate I support, because things end up being rather polarized and people either love a candidate or hate them, and they might have second or third choices, anyone but X candidate. However, I think that would be a more democratic way. I think some people disagree with me, and I understand the counter argument, like under ranked choice, someone might win who was no one's first choice. It's not perfect, but I think it would be better than what we have, and I think a combination of that and public financing would bring about some of the same results as the term limit initiative is doing. I think a term limit effectively should be an election, but it's imperfect because name recognition. A lot of people are just voting on the name recognition. They're not that informed. They just they don't really follow local politics. They vote for who they've heard of.
Well, I believe in the public financing because that's what I'm doing. But I think that to make it perfectly democratic, I think that those who are on the council who are using public financing to run for higher office should resign from the council and then run collecting public financing, because then they would be beyond any accusation that they're selling access to the council.
Wait, so you think they would resign?
I think that if you're a member of the council and you're using public financing to run for higher office, you should resign, because then people couldn't say that you were selling access to the council in return for those contributions.
So they should have resigned in their final year?
I think so, yes. If they're using public financing, then it would be fair. Then it would be a level playing field.
Interesting. Now, who would have replaced them in that final year?
Whoever was appointed.
So you would be okay with someone like Leggett, say?
Well, no, I would be in favor of having a special election by mail, which could be conducted within a month.
Interesting. I think I know why you would go that way, because if it's narrowed down to 1 month and it's by mail, people might vote completely based on name recognition. And and people know your name. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying.
Well, I think they would.
I get why you would
I
say
think
that.
they would vote completely on issue recognition. I don't think Montgomery Countyans are too smart just to vote on name recognition. They vote for issues.
But how would you distinguish between candidates within the span of 1 month? Now, a caveat to that. I actually think in an ideal world, we would have a system that is more like what Europe has, in which an election, the campaign season lasts just for a few months, not 2 years.
Yeah.
I think we have an election industry here. I mean,
We
if you think
do.
of it, you have consultants, you have pollsters, you have, and I know lots of people who are paid to work on campaigns, and I don't want to take anything away from their jobs, but it is part of the problem that we have this whole industry surrounded on just elections. It's like a bad reality show, and
Good
I think
point, Heather.
ideally we should have a system closer to what we have in Europe, but that's not going to happen.
But see, we
it's
agree.
too far gone.
Once again, we agree. We agree on almost
something. Look at
everything.
no, we don't agree on almost anything, everything. So, one more thing about term limits. Now, we're gonna see how this plays out. Democratic primary is in about 2 months, or like about 70 days.
But don't tell anyone where it is, because if there's a low turnout, then no one can say they have a mandate.
Right. Okay. I won't do that. So we have primary Democratic coming up, and
During summer vacation, when the parents are taking their kids on trips, I mean, just
there's also early voting that takes place the 14th.
what a terrible idea that was, to change the primary to summer vacation. It was in September, right around Labor Day, which was the best time to have it, and they did it because they said the military couldn't return their votes in time, but as a result, the turnout is now less than half what it used to be.
Yeah, I don't disagree. However, I imagine that most people campaigning now are very much looking forward to this all being over. I personally, I'm not even directly on a campaign. I volunteer, but I requested half of June 27th off from work, and I hope they give it to me.
No,
So
I think you should come over to work on my campaign after that time, because the chances are at least 5 out of 6 that your candidate will lose in the primary, and you'll be looking for something.
I think it's slightly, I don't think it's equal between each candidate. I think some may have advantages, but that's another issue. I think I will take time away from politics for the summer. Anyway, so we have the Democratic primary coming up. There's term limits, and whatever our reasons for term limits, for voting for or against it were, we don't know what the outcome could be. Some candidates have said that along with your ballot initiative, that some members of the business community were hoping for their own slate of at-large and executive candidates.
You think they'll put together a slate? They might. They still
de
might.
facto. And then the Democratic Socialists of America have also put together their endorsements, and it could go either way. It could be a mix of both. It could be just this motley crew of more pro-business or more pro-labor, economically progressive candidates, or who knows? We don't know what it's going to turn out. But the narrative of some commenters on Bethesda magazine, which I know you have read mine, I have trolled you a few
We
times.
usually agree.
I've trolled you a few times, but
Do you do it under your name or
on
other
the
name?
MoCo Millennial,
Oh.
I have trolled some of your comments.
Oh, you're the MoCo Millennial.
That's the show.
I
This is what
wanted
it
to
is.
find out who that was. Boy, was I out to get MoCo Millennial.
Well, now you are speaking face to face.
Why did you post as Heather Elizabeth?
Because this is my YouTube show. This is my Twitter handle. This is my alter ego.
Okay.
And so anyway, there's this narrative that the term limits initiative is a more fiscal conservative anti-tax reaction.
no.
But then what may happen is, say we get Elrich as executive, and then
We
3 out of
won't.
the 4 council at-large candidates endorsed by the DSA. I mean, what now? What if that
What
happens?
now? Well, I can tell you one thing that would be what now is that we'll get tax increases, and also there'll be a move afoot to let people who are not U.S. citizens vote in county elections, because that's what DSA is for, and that'll bring about some very interesting complications, because I'm a trial attorney. I do a lot of jury trials. I've won like maybe my last 8 jury trials, and it'll be very interesting for me to try to pick people from the jury panel who are not U.S. citizens. I'll have to do a lot of investigation as to what their background is, what beliefs they have in the judicial system, in convicting people or not convicting people. Will be some very interesting constitutional issues there.
Now, my take on that is, if you're paying taxes in a local jurisdiction, then maybe you should vote locally. So I'm not against what Takoma Park has, and also letting 16-year-olds vote. I think that's great.
I think voting 16-year-olds is a wonderful idea.
We agree on something. Way to go.
We agree on almost everything.
No, we don't agree on almost everything. We agree on some things. We're finding things where we agree on. One last question in this segment. Takoma Park.
Oh, yes. I
What
love
do you
Takoma
mean?
Park.
What do you mean when you say that Montgomery County has been Takoma Parked? I live in Takoma Park, and I've joked with several of my guests that we have this conspiracy to take over the world, and I always say that would be amazing if the rest of the world would just have the mentality as Takoma Park.
I love Takoma Park. Sammy Abbott and I were good friends. They have the municipal building named after him. I represented him in several lawsuits. I represented Deborah Drudge, who was a resident of Takoma Park, whose son, Matt Drudge, runs a national...
I know, that's so bizarre. Matt Drudge has connections to Takoma Park.
Yeah, he was born there. He lived there. And as a matter of fact, Deborah Drudge's case was the definitive sex discrimination case in Montgomery County history, because there she was denied a job with the Montgomery County Attorney's Office, whose job it was to enforce the sex discrimination laws. And when she was denied the job, they asked her questions about marital status and child care arrangements. So she said, I want to sue them. I said, I'll take your case. We went to federal court in Baltimore, and you know what we discovered in the discovery process? We found out that Montgomery County Attorney's Office and all the people in the county government, whenever they conducted an oral interview with a female job applicant, you don't get a job without an interview, they were rating these female job applicants from upper to lower quarter as the physique and facial features. Now, Deborah Drudge was rated in the third quarter as to both, but she was in the first quarter as to smarts. And as soon as that was exposed, they immediately settled the case. They decided they weren't going to ask about marital status and child care arrangements. They weren't going to rate all the female job applicants as the physique and facial features. And they even offered her a job. She would have been the first female attorney there since 1939, when the head of the Democratic Party worked there, who was a female. And she turned the job down. She said, I don't want to work with those people.
Okay, that's a
and that
disturbing
case. That stemmed from Takoma Park.
Yeah.
And I represent...
That's a progressive position.
It is. I'm probably more progressive than any candidate in this race, because for one thing, I opposed the increase in the state sales tax in 2007 that the Montgomery County Council unanimously supported. That is the most regressive tax you could possibly have. Every mother's child is taxed every single day.
We're getting a bit out of scope, but that was a very socially progressive position.
Well, there's one other case I want to mention where I represented Sammy Abbott and the North Tacoma Citizens Association. When the red line was built to Silver Spring and then north, they rammed the red line through Jessup Blair Park without even showing Jessup Blair Park on the environmental impact statement. And Sammy was outraged, as was I. We went to federal court and settled the case. As a matter of fact, the judge put William Horkin and myself in a jail cell and said, settle this case. Okay, and we settled it in one afternoon where Metro had to give parkland in exchange for the parkland they had taken from Jessup Blair Park, and they had to keep the Juniper Street Bridge for several years, which they were just going to forget and tear down. And Sammy was very Abbott, as was Ruth Abbott, his wife. So I've represented people in Takoma Park in a lot of interesting lawsuits, and we've usually won. I respect Takoma Park. I mean, here we have Tom Perez. We have Tom Perez, who's head of the Democratic Party from Takoma Park.
Yeah, and we have Jamie Raskin.
This is great.
Who is my favorite person ever.
Jamie and I are good friends, and he confided something in me, which I'm going to confide in you.
Okay, and in our viewers.
And with the viewers. And you know what? He's just come back from a trip to the Middle East with Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. You know what he said? And he acted very friendly about her, but he told me, he said, Nancy Pelosi is not the millennial choice for the leader of the House Democrats.
I would agree.
And
I would agree.
But you know why she'll never be booted out from that position? Because she is from California, and California is a very powerful state financially.
Silicon Valley money.
It has.
Are you still doing okay?
We're doing just fine. Thank you. It has more than 50 members of Congress. It has a lot of clout, and it controls much of the country's finances. That's why she will never lose her job.
That makes sense. Now, what I wanted to say before the end of this segment is I want to know what you mean by Takoma Park. Yes. Yes. As someone who lives in and loves Takoma Park, what do you mean by that, and why is that a bad thing?
Well, all I can say is I can tell that Helen Elizabeth has never been to Takoma Park because she is running and biking almost every day. However, Takoma Park people, they want to boot us out of our cars. They don't want to improve I-270. They don't want to build M83. They don't want to widen Goshen Road. They don't want to help people. They want to kill the Montrose East Parkway. They believe that people should get on a train and not drive. Well, let me tell you, I've got a 2009 Ford Escape Hybrid that has, guess how many miles on it?
A lot. More than your daughter and I have run.
Take a guess.
200,000.
410,000 miles. The only time I have taken a bus since that time is a couple times I went with the University of Maryland wrestling team up to the Grapple in the Garden in New York City. Okay. If I had to take a bus everywhere that I drive, I wouldn't get to half the places I drive to.
Yeah, okay.
And the ridership.
Not everyone can afford their own personal vehicle.
Oh, I think they can. They can.
No, I only have a car because I inherited one.
Well, but you have it.
I inherited it. It was a gift. I honestly would rather be in the situation to not have this car because someone passed away to get.
How did you get here today?
I drove that car that I inherited.
I'm glad you didn't take the bus, because if you'd taken the bus, I'd still be here waiting and drinking.
Or I probably would have left at noon, and didn't get to canvass for your opponent beforehand. Not everyone is in a situation where they have their own personal vehicle.
Well, look, my friend Rosa Parks, okay,
your friend Rosa
Parks? Yes, she appointed me to be the first general counsel for the National Caucus on the Black Asia, okay? They tried to make her sit in the back of the bus. Montgomery County Council is trying to put us back on the bus, okay? We don't want to be back on the bus. The ridership in these buses is way down. It's very expensive. The county's losing lots of money. We want to be able to drive in Montgomery County. And being Takoma Park means that we're not building new roads. We're not improving I-270 over the last 20 years. There's a feeling that people, the cover of it is that, people, we want more bike lanes. So they say if they say that, then people won't need to have a car. Okay, but I can tell you that none of these people. I had 2 bikes in my office on Wisconsin Avenue, and I used to ride down to Georgetown several times a week. Okay, and it was a nice ride there on the Bethesda Crescent Trail. But people have to have their cars. The cars are very comfortable. You can hear music. You can hear books. You can text even though you're not supposed to.
Okay.
And I'm
if
also.
anyone remembers my Capital Beltway segment, you can refer back to the intro to the show, or with my first episode with Mila, or with the end of episode with Mark when I make fun of Beltway drivers. No, I won't belabor this
I'm
point.
also for eliminating a lot of these speed cameras, which are outside of school zones.
So we can
because
go
they're
as
just,
fast as we want and kill people.
They're just no. It's not resulting in more deaths. The speed cameras haven't saved deaths. But look.
Well, Prince George's County is overwhelmingly in favor of getting that speed camera on 212 because one of the most deadly highways in Maryland.
In one place, okay, in one place. But I bet they'd like to take it off of New Hampshire Avenue where it's on the downside of a hill where a lot of people are getting tickets unnecessarily. We have a lot of bright people in Montgomery County, okay? If 5,000 of these bright people every month are getting a speed camera ticket in a particular location, it's not because these people are stupid, it's because the speed limit is too low. So we need to make adjustments. And that's what I'm going to do as county executive. I'm going to look at all these high volume speed camera locations and I'm going to eliminate the cameras there, or alternatively raise the speed limit because that many bright people can't be wrong.
Yeah, well, I won't belabor this point. I did get one speed camera ticket from Takoma Park because speed limit is 25. I was going 38 downhill to pass a biker before an oncoming car came. I got a ticket for that.
You should have had me defend you. We would have won that case.
It was $40. I just paid it.
We would have won that case.
It went to Montgomery County schools or
Heather
roads or
Elizabeth
something.
would have been victorious over the county. As a matter of fact, I had some speed cameras eliminated on East-West Highway because they were not placed properly. They weren't in a residential zone. They weren't placed properly, and they are no longer there.
Yeah. Well, to close out, I just want to say that yes, I do drive more than I take metro or buses, but I don't want to even say fortunate because the situation in which I inherited the car was not desirable. But most people my age cannot afford to purchase their own cars. We have a lot of other expenses to keep up with. I'm very fortunate that I can afford my own rent because it's rent controlled in Takoma Park. Anyway, I would prefer to take public transit and not deal with the notorious Beltway drivers and the which I like to call the Olympics of bad driving. The worst drivers from DC, Maryland, and Virginia all conglomerating in this one death pit. I would rather take metro, but the metro is half the time on fire, and if it's not on fire, it's delayed for other reasons.
There you are.
I wish it could. I mean, it doesn't just need more funding; it needs better management. So we're going to take a break, and he's going to get food, and we're going to talk about youth fitness and making Montgomery move again. And
Yes.
I think we're going to actually have a lot to agree with.
Right, and Helen, I predict that by the time your candidate loses in the primary, you're going to come over and help me get elected county executive.
How much are you going to wager on that?
A lot.
I will take the bet that is not whatever.